this morning, troubles on my mind. Bills piling up, feels like I'm falling behind. Worked hard all week, but the money's all gone. Can't catch a break, feeling like I don't belong. But I can't wait to get home and listen to the History Homos podcast. That's right, the History Homos podcast. Hey, homos, don't worry, man. Struggling to make it, but I'm gonna get home and listen to the History Homos podcast. Got mouths to feed and a roof that leaks. I'm a blue-collar man, I drive a truck, but I won't give in, won't let life bring me down. Gonna keep on listening till I turn it all around. But I can't wait to get home and listen to the History Homos podcast. That's right, the History Homos podcast. Hey, homos, don't worry, man. Struggling to make it, but I'm...
And we're live. Welcome back to the show. And joining me this week, as always, is Patrick, and also returning to the show, one of our first and most favoritist of guests, Bobby Tamburro. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. One of my favorite places to be.
And also, Bobby, gotta say that we're doing it a little different this time, but I do like the sort of on-brand approach that we've taken to this week's episode, and it's taken me to places in Rome where I didn't know I would go. So this is a very happy accident that we decided to, at the last minute, switch gears instead of doing a continuation of our previous Rome. But I think we have a good presentation for you all tonight. So before this, Bobby, I know this was I usually at this point in the show, I always say to the guest, "Oh, why did you pick this for the topic?" But full confession here, I came up with this idea for the episode. But prior to this, I will follow it up with a question though. Bobby, prior to this, what did you know, or what was your understanding of what Roman religion was like prior to your investigations?
So I actually knew a decent amount. My senior year in Latin, we had to translate the Aeneid. Like that was what we did the entire year. They would just give you pages and you would translate it. And occasionally the website you would normally use was down, and then you'd find one that rhymed and you get called on to read and you had to pretend like it didn't rhyme so you didn't cheat. But no, so I actually knew a decent amount, but what fascinated me was like within every major religion, there are like certain core tenets that run throughout, and it feels like Rome was just kind of the first culture that was really like, no, yeah, I like your idea. It's kind of like ours. Let's be one. And they would take their ideas and be like, no, we don't have to fight about it. You're just saying the same thing the wrong way, which is kind of the most arrogant way to be. Like, no, you're just wrong.
It is ballsy, yeah.
Rome is perpetually putting its arm around every society. Like, listen, buddy, come here. Let me show you what you really mean by all this running around with your pants off.
Absolutely. It's the 3 days grace in their song Riots. Like, do you feel pissed off? Have we just conquered you? Come join our team.
Right. I will say this. So it's almost like, and I couldn't agree more, by the way, but it really is like Rome's superpower was its like super adaptation ability in order to just become whatever, like be a chameleon in order to just absorb as many smaller fungible groups of humans as possible.
Absolutely.
Fungible groups of humans. Oh, what a horror.
They were the Bruce Lee of empires. They were water. We'll fit into whatever vessel you put me in.
Yeah, the Jim Norton of empires as well. But
I'll fit whatever vessel into what you put me.
Yeah, right. Okay, so there's so much to cover here. I guess the base thing. So we've never addressed this on the show in any of our prior Rome episodes at length. But I do think this is appropriate to talk about this now, because the formation of the city of Rome is it's very important for like the development of their like religious beliefs But it is funny that we never brought it up before. But the story of Rome being founded was a pair of brothers who were abandoned. I think the mother was supposedly a Vestal virgin, or just Vestal priestess or something.
Absolutely.
And also, by the way, worth mentioning, a descendant of Aeneas, of Troy, of course. This is, again, maybe this is a little bit of a retcon, because we were just talking about the chameleon like ability of the Romans to be able to do this. But the story goes that these two boys they were separated from their mother at childhood and were raised by a she-wolf. And they were descendants of Aeneas of Troy, from the Odyssey, by the way. And yeah, so
not from the Odyssey.
From the Odyssey, sorry.
From the Aeneid.
From the Aeneid? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's his name. That's why I had to be like, wait a second.
Yeah,
they both got lost for 10 years and bitched the whole time. I get why you get them confused.
Yes, that's true. Actually, yeah.
One guy is a Moor, though.
And they did so much fucking as a consequence.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the way the story goes.
Romulus and Remus.
Romulus and Remus, and they, like other people in this area of Italy known as Latium, which is where the name Latin comes from, with their language that they spoke. They worshipped a pantheon of gods, and actually there wasn't much hierarchy to them whatsoever. And I now, hang on, let's see. 5 minutes, 33 seconds, our first mention of Gerard. I would imagine that the formation of these gods are much in keeping with the Gerardian theory of the creation of divinity. Which, Bobby, I'm not going to bore you with the whole rundown on this, because we'll have to take a 5-minute detour to explain it entirely.
You're
but
welcome, audience.
They know. But basically, in a breath, the idea is like, at a time of crisis, a lot of times, people in a primitive society will engage in human sacrifice in order to get out their pent up societal aggression. And again, I'm giving you a really thumbnail sketch of this. And then consequently, many times this, because of the fact that this human sacrifice is taking place, it actually does ease the sort of societal pressure that's going on in real life. The primitive peoples will then mistake the relief that they feel for the actual act of the sacrifice, and then they will deify the person who they victimized. And then that is in a thumbnail sketch, the Gerardian view on how the earliest gods were created.
So just if I understand you correctly, just to put it in 2025 terms.
Sure.
If you had a healthcare system that was beyond fucked, and somebody shot a CEO, and then society could watch him be murdered, and then they deified him. That would fit into this theme pretty.
Or if they deified someone else close to the situation as well. This also does work. People do this. Yeah, it's definitely in keeping of the thing. But yes, you could say that something like that. I can't imagine where you came up with that scenario.
Just pulled it from thin air, buddy.
You could see that in a more primitive time, not ruled by logic and reason, which is, by the way, another one of Gerard's things is that the reason why we have arrived in a time period of logic and reason is due to the revelations of Christ and the Christendom of Europe, basically. This is a big thing I want to talk about too, because specifically when Europe became Christianized, its focus from the sort of collective onto the individual became very we sort of very pointedly started moving in that way, which is really what I want to focus on tonight, where we talk about Roman religion in general. I just want to sort of meditate on this idea that when we talk about Roman religion, we talk about how it's very quid pro quo, it's very transactional. Um, and it seems like they just do it sort of like out of rote memory, and there's no like faith, there's no like sense of personal belief or personal convictions or anything. And to us, that seems silly and like and you know pointless and
Mechanistic.
mechanistic and just evil in a way because it's just like
Yeah.
but the reason we all think that is because we're fundamentally brought up in this Western Christian mindset or mindset, I guess, or a philosophical starting point, which is the idea that you know to truly have faith or religion, it has to have some sort of personal connection within your mind as an individual. But the fact of the matter is, because they hadn't yet received this sort of focus on the individual that we find endemic to the Christian mind, or the Christian European mind, they simply did not have the mental vocabulary to understand what the fuck we're talking about when we say that. You know, so like to a Roman, they would look at us and go and see that we don't literally sacrifice food and like products to our God and go like, what, do you even like him? Do you even like Jesus? You don't, I don't
Yeah.
sacrifice, you barely sacrifice drinking for a few months a year for him.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so
You could also be like it's a secondary look, like you sacrifice other things, you devote other things, like it's a higher level of thinking that they just didn't get because it's like
exactly.
no,
It's
I
not,
just
both of us are
followed
right in a
I
way.
no no, I think we're saying the same thing. It's just like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were checking boxes. I get really
Mm.
pissed when a family member sends me a group text where it's like happy this to everybody in the family and then I get 32 and my people are like why does that make you mad? It's like if it really mattered, they would text me personally. They just want to be able to say I texted everybody, check. And that's what the Romans
Yes, it's
want to do.
very
Yeah.
pagan of them to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And like if you look at a lot of the old Jewish things, it's the same idea. Where it's like just
Mhm.
don't piss off God or bad things happen. And
Yeah,
like
well,
that's
it
what the
definitely
Romans
was.
were
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where you see that shift go from when, you know, again, Jesus is actually a fulfillment of that prophecy, of course. Um, and so yeah, it did it very much. And imagine still going with the old version today, by the way.
Couldn't if I tried. Couldn't be me. Yeah, right.
Yeah, this guy never.
No, not I, said the goose.
But okay, so I really want to focus on that, and I want to this is like the fundamental thing I want to like drive home is that we're going to talk about the way that the Romans practice the religious, and again from our 2025, again we're taping on the first of the year. Happy New Year to everyone listening, by the way.
The holiday.
It seems to us, it seems like it's very silly and contrite, or trite rather, or contrived, trite and contrived. um, it's just it's like we're speaking Chinese and they're speaking Vulcan. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like there's no common
but
ground.
but
Yeah.
there actually is a lot of relatability. Like you could see where a lot of this habitual, just if I do this, I feel better bullshit evolved
True.
into today. So
Mm.
like,
That's
you know what I mean?
neo-paganism, Bobby.
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy your crystals, you neo-pagan fuck.
Yeah.
But
I
just
think it's
Um,
ironic.
one point before
Sorry.
you move on from the Romulus and Remus story.
Yeah, we
So,
haven't even dove into it yet, but go.
but basically, just the idea is they descended from Mars is like the original story, and then later
Right.
on during a revitalizing period, they made it. He came from Aeneas to try to tie the two religions together.
Right,
But I
right,
love
yeah.
the idea that every religion has to tie back the lineage of important people. Like I don't know, we just went through Christmas Eve. And I don't know if you guys did Christmas Eve Mass, but it's 6 p.m. every year. They
Mhm.
start out with the long lineage of how Jesus connects back to David. And you're like,
Mm.
I don't know about all that. And it's like, that's bullshit. And you only connected it to Joseph. But it's so funny to see, regardless of whether it's pagans, Christians, even Jewish people, that lineage is super important.
Yeah.
So
Well,
stop
yeah, I mean,
fucking
like,
whores. That's the point. Just don't fuck whores.
I mean, I can co-sign that one. Um,
Here, here.
but okay, so
But
yeah,
even
no,
that story is literally the a Herculean trial he went through. Like being abandoned, being raised by a she wolf, and then having to
Oh yeah.
establish a new group. So they literally just stole the idea of Romulus and Remus, and we're like, no, they were twins. Let's add a backstory.
Yeah. Well, also again, not to dive too deeply into Gerard here, but they also they fall into an Gerardian archetype of like the two brothers at odds, which is a very major theme throughout all of mythological history.
So alike that they cannot be at rest.
Yeah.
They're constantly neck and neck. One is constantly outdoing the other, outdoing the other, outdoing the other, stepping over,
So they
stepping
can't
over,
take it. The
stepping.
mimetic pressure is too much, and it ends in murder.
And yeah, let's get to how Remus dies, which, by the way, Uncle Remus by Frank Zappa. Good tune. It's a great tune.
And Uncle Remus
From
from
the
the Song of the
Boondocks.
South, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So Romulus and Remus. Yeah.
They're in the
You
field.
go ahead, Patrick. I've been fucking dominating. Go ahead.
Yeah. Romulus and Remus find themselves in the field, and they're looking to establish, where Rome, where the city will begin. Yeah. And Remus chooses a less fortifiable position than Romulus. They agree. They make a bet that whoever augurs, augury being the study of the patterns of flight of birds, and scrying, meaning from that, taking meaning,
deriving meaning from that.
Yeah, deriving prophecy even from just the the way of the birds. So Romulus counted 12, Remus counted 6. That was the deal, but Remus says no, I don't. He just totally forsakes the deal.
He said, "Zippity doodah, your mountain's gay."
Oh, that mountain. And I heard what happens up on that mountain. So all the birds are up there for a reason.
Exactly.
So now I can't. Maybe 3 different places I read this. What happens to Remus? He falls over a wall. Bobby, help me.
No, I can actually help you out. Scott, do you want to jump in? Do you know this?
No, go ahead.
So basically, he's like,
no, we should. Wall.
Exactly. Romulus goes, so he draws out the foundation of where the city is going to be.
The Palatine, or the Pomerium.
Oh, thank you. And Romulus goes, "This is your city. It sucks." And he steps over it. And Romulus goes, "Nah, don't do that again."
It's
Remus
like
goes,
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, he goes, "What, this?" And he goes, "One more." And he does it a 3rd time, and then he kills him because he stepped over the wall. It's very Cain and Abel.
Yeah. I mean, again, same archetype we're talking about here.
Except for now, Romulus is a hero, unlike.
Well, that's the beauty of it, Bobby. That's what I'm saying. So this is, even though it was the Old Testament, which is the like more brutal and not fully as it's partial revelation. It's only a partial revelation, but still the good guy is not the good guy is who dies in the one that later became Christianity. And in the pagan story, the strong, tough guy who slayed the other guy is the good guy. And this is the fundamental disconnect between pagan theology and Christian theology, and why, in part, why when we look back at these people, we go, fuck them. They're scumbags.
I remember we read Troy and debating that, like, based on Greek standards, Achilles is the hero, not Hector. Like, we're looking at it through today's eyes, where he sacrificed himself and did the right thing. But in their terms, Achilles won. That's all that mattered. So it's the same idea. Like, if you don't have a cultural context to it, you got to try to look through it through their eyes, where it was survival. This was an area that was conquered nonstop. Literally, Rome's the first empire to come out of these people that wasn't Greece. Like, it's able to hold on and much longer lasting. Right. So their survival, it's about who can.
And remember also the audience that this story was for was people who frequently ritually murdered people in order to get over struggles that were within their community. You know what I mean? So it's just as night follows day, the guy who gets killed is a bitch who sucks.
Absolutely.
If I may, further parallels between Romulus and Remus and Cain and Abel, these are not only stories about brothers at odds, one murdering the other, but they're also, why are these stories about two brothers, at odds also happen to revolve around the founding of civilizations, the founding of cultures.
It's very true. Yeah.
So if you condense down, and one thing that further about Gerard, Bobby, is, you know, the subjects that are chosen for exile or sacrifice are always those who cannot, who have no one coming to their rescue. They are the least,
The marginal people.
Yeah, the most marginalized, the least connected, and the least likely to be missed after the fact, and the least likely to inspire any sort of retribution on their behalf after they're murdered or whatever.
It's an important factor in them becoming deified.
And the way that it goes with Cain and Abel is Cain kills Abel and God marks him. He does not punish him. Well, and he doesn't punish him finally. Well, you could say maybe, but he, not only does he not outright just, you know, smite Cain, he directs that everyone else on earth not hurt him. If you see Cain, you do not kill him. You do not take vengeance on Cain for Abel on my behalf or Abel's behalf, because someone's going to empathize with Cain. Someone's going to say that you did the wrong thing, and they're going to come after you.
Interesting.
And it's the reciprocation of violence and the controlling it, the guiding it, the mitigating its destructive qualities and emphasizing its constructive qualities, in the sense that if we can all 99 of us gather around one person and just at least all agree that at least we're not them, or at least we're not that group, we can begin our own thing. We can begin to build something that is apart from everything else. So the fact that we, in Cain and Abel, we get the story is out of this murder and out of this injunction by God that you will not seek retribution, and by not seeking retribution, it will become the basis of law and order.
Oh wow!
So,
like almost getting rid of the Hammurabi Code, right?
Yeah, like, and then Romulus and Remus, it's the opposite, where the violence and the
where violence has become law. Yes.
Yes, the original. Yes. Oh, it was the original alt-righter peddling to kids like, well, I can lift more than you, bro, so I'm right. I'm the alpha. You have to listen to me.
Post physique.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So now we got so anyway, they ended up deciding on the Palatine Hill, and we just alluded to before, Bobby alluded to the Pomerium, which this is important here because the Pomerium, in the theological development of the city of Rome, it was very important for a long time that no foreign gods reside within the Pomerium, and that all changes after the time of the Republic, and it's after the time that the Greeks sort of took over, and that is brought sort of that epoch is sort of brought upon by something called the books, the Sibelian books, or whatever the fuck they're called.
The Sibelian books, yeah.
But we'll get to that in a minute. So we mentioned before that in the story of Romulus and Remus, they did this thing called augury. This is a really, really, really shockingly important aspect of Roman religion, being that augury, the study of birds, in order to predict the future, is something that is associated with their chief, air quotes, chief god, Jupiter, Optimus Maximus later. And so he's the sky god. He's actually fucking Yahweh, dude. He's got a lot of comparisons with Yahweh, being that he's a storm/sky god.
This is a tangent, but you know how like Zeus and Jupiter, their whole backstory is that they're constantly pretending to be something else and just fucking. I like to think Yahweh is just the best character he's ever played.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He got that. Yeah, that's true, dude. He got that.
He's like, watch me fuck with this group for just thousands of years.
Yeah.
I'll
fuck their minds. I'll fuck their minds for thousands of years.
Oh, you thought it was done? 1940s, bitch.
I was literally just gonna say, yeah, it's just Zeus putting on different mustaches until he gets to the little one.
Yeah, it's
Slowly
good.
shaving.
That's what I say every time I'm about to like trim my beard. I'm like, I might walk out of here with just a little
With
mustache.
the Charlie Chaplin.
I might goof this up really bad. So
Yeah.
we might have to start, from there again. But
You don't want to do
yeah,
that.
no. Just in the
Or
mirror in the
do you?
bathroom. So
AI.
what another speaking of augury, there is the bloodier varietal of
Oh
that,
yeah,
which would be
Haruspex.
haruspex, which is just ridiculous, divining
So,
animal
okay, we
viscera.
mentioned before that there's a lot of transactional sort of sacrificing going on, and this was very regimented. I believe this is like one of the most stable aspects of their religion throughout the almost 2,000 years that they existed. um the method of their sacrificing was pretty constant, which is they would like do it at night, by the way, because it was like a secret thing that they did.
It was
And then they would
magic.
like it was magic, yeah. And then they would like just slice up the back in order to kill the animal. And depending on what animal and what god they were honoring, it'd be a different animal, and they would either be castrated or not, depending on what god it was, or what the
Right, yeah.
circumstances of what the reason for the sacrifice was. And this was all kept orally, I believe. I don't think this was written down anywhere. And this was like sort of part of the priesthood, is to remember these sort of things, and they did. So
So actually, I got to jump in here, fellas. And I think unfortunately, we've been schooled by white winners write the narrative society because we're missing a huge link, and that's the Etruscan religion.
right, of
Yes.
Because
course, yeah.
the
Yes.
Etruscans, that's what Aeneas was. And what happened was, and this is something you'll see throughout, for me at least, is that they said Troy wasn't real until we found Troy. So everything was coming from the Greeks in all the archaeologists and historians' minds because they didn't have an existence of an Etruscan powerhouse that long through. So if you look at it, like, how did you pronounce that word? Because all I have is Haru spicy, and I know that's not right.
Haruspex.
Haruspex.
That's probably the more correct way, but that's how it looks on a page to me. Haruspex.
I'm on board with it. If we're all mispronouncing it together, they can't kill us all.
True, that's
But
true.
so that actually came from the Etruscan. That was their big thing, was playing with each entrails
Good
and
eye.
divining it. And they actually did. It wasn't a like a textbook or anything, but they did write an establishment called the Disciplinarium Etruscae, which was their manual on how to divine. Because a big thing was,
Oh,
if you picked the wrong type of animal, or if you were looking at the entrails and it wasn't right, the sacrifice didn't count.
right.
Like,
It
you
didn't
fucked up and
take.
had to do it again.
Yeah. Which is that, because this is important too, because in the early Roman eras, and this is very much an influence of the Etruscan civilization, by the way, is the fact that they would it was either a yay or nay answer always. And this, again, I believe this was an Etruscan
Yep.
concept through the
Binary.
Haruspex. And again, we didn't even say the fully, but yeah, they would take after the animal was killed, they'd slice open its belly and then pull out specific parts, and then they'd look at it and go, "Oh, this is good," or "This is bad," meaning, "Oh, the gods liked it. Cool, we're good, we're solid, boys. Let's go home, pack it in."
A lot of liver
And
play.
yeah, they had
They
little
start
model
shotgunning
livers.
beers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had model
High
liver.
fives.
Yeah, they're fucking. Oh no, they're dumping the vat of livers on the coach priest's head. Um, but yeah, so this was very
Liberated.
weird, but again, this is like how they discern. So, but it's important to note here that at this point in history, they were very like a binary choice between yes or no. And later, once the Greeks come in, this all changed, and it became specifically because of the Sibelian books, which is they started going in and going, "Oh, the books say we need to do blah 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 blah," and it was always what the government wanted to do. That's the
Yes.
secret.
Perfect.
We'll get there when we get there, I also
We've
want to say,
always been
before we get
there.
too far in this, I want to recommend a book that I read 80% of the way, called The Religion of Numa, by his name is Jesse Benedict Carter, written in 1906. and he's like, I think he's like some kind of theosophist actually. He's probably some kind of weird spooky guy, but he wrote this really excellent,
Oh, it's great.
like excellent, well-researched history of the developments of theology in Rome. And he has like takes in it, by the way. He's like his overall arc of take is like before, when they had like the monarchistic religion, that's when they were like based, and then they became cringe when the Greeks came in, and then they ruined it with republicanism.
Yeah, it was a great book, and I appreciate that he goes to pains to explain that the Romans are very it's animistic, really, a lot of
Yeah.
this, but it's so detached. It's like Silicon Valley psychedelia, and that like there's this insistence on a spiritual realm or a metaphysical plane or
Yeah,
metaphysical,
Newman.
yeah, but
Hello, Newman.
hello, jewelry. um but there's just something so, in the same way that I've always understood ritual, in its most antiquated and, how you say, social sense, and
Primeval.
like, yeah, that all the way up to like Golden Dawn gay shit in like a marble hallway or something. But all ritual is the enactment of a technology, of something that's worked, quote unquote, before.
Social technology, yeah.
Yeah. So whether, in the same way that like in Malcolm in the Middle, when Hal is doing all the little rituals when he's bowling, if you remember this episode,
Yes, I
folks,
do.
he's
I do.
hitting
And he
nothing
zips
but
up, he unzips his
dingers.
pants, zips them up, and then throws the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he
And he
keeps
takes a
doing a
sip
new
of a
thing.
drink too, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken. That's a good episode. I actually do
Someone
remember that
gets
one.
up to leave and he's like, wait, where are you going? I'm doing great. But it's all very situational, and it's all very
My wife's
contrived.
probably laughing right now because she loves that show, and I know she recognizes the
It's the
reference.
best.
Yeah.
Malcolm in the Middle was the best. But I'm sorry, I'm going on and on here. But it's
Okay, but so let's touch on the new man. Hello, new men. Let's say hello to new men real quick. New men is like this, and again, you hit the nail on the head when you said animistic, because I don't know too much about like other forms of animism, but as I understand it, there is like a sort of concept that everything has this like life force running through it or something. And the ancient
yeah,
Romans had this concept. It was called new men, and great men had more new men, and gods had even more new men.
fair enough.
Basically, is the long and short of it.
But it's
Um,
so shallow.
it's
There's no
midi
real,
chlorians. You
yeah,
got
it's
more midi
very,
chlorians in use.
they, in the same way that they're not interested in creating coherent
Mythologies
mythologies or,
of their
origin
gods. It's
stories.
funny because they do have intricate mythologies of their their kings and real semi-historical figures, which maybe they're real, maybe they're not. But it's interesting that they had so much time and energy to put into like the history of Romulus and the first
Yeah,
and King Numa and these guys. And they didn't have
great
time to
King
go.
Numa.
But I think again, maybe that is the attributes to their success later on, when they were able to sort of just shove all this shit under the rug and then sort of just adapt it all to be Greek. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe
Because they
that's
never really
why.
believed anything in the first place. If
Did,
everything is spiritually imbued, then it's all on the same level, anyways. So nothing is special. Nothing is,
Yeah.
any more spiritually imbued than anything else. It's sorry, Bobby. It
no,
peeves the
you're
shit
absolutely
out of
right.
me. It,
No, I think it's brilliant. It solves the answer to people like we all know the kid who was super religious growing up and you were like, I hate that he tries so hard. The simplest answer is, oh, he's better at it than me. He was born
yeah.
with more of it. Fuck him. Let him go. I'm gonna just live my life and
Hmm.
do what I feel is right. Which is like if you think about where Christianity evolved to with like Kierkegaard, it's all about what you feel on the inside. That's where we ended up anyway. Like I'm doing
Yeah.
the right thing for me, and it's kind of funny that like it's just the simplest version and might be the most basic. like it might be the answer. Like if you think about it, like
You know what, man?
flow like a
Different strokes
river.
for different folks.
Yeah,
But
hey,
I will
fuck
say
it.
that
He's better than me.
I do think the reason why, and maybe this says something about our times, though, Bobby. I think that instinct is understandable, but I do think it is reactionary, and it's based out of your fundamental dissatisfaction with society as it has been presented to you. That sort of apes these values that suppose, like, we have an ostensibly Christian ethics oriented society, but you look out the window, obviously not.
Yeah, exactly.
So I understand why many people are drawn to these ideas. But I do want to remember that it's all based around looking at entrails after they digging
Yeah.
around in a pig's belly after you kill the pig.
If I may do a slight tangent here, some talking about slaughtering a pig in front of a crowd. I have some very personal
See, he's about to say,
firsthand
you see, I'm
experience.
Portuguese. So,
Yeah. So these
wait,
people,
is this really where this is going?
yes, it's called, my friend, the matanza, the killing, where basically they hang a pig upside down by its hind legs. They cut its throat, they drain the blood, and then you go to the function hall underneath your Catholic church, and everyone sits down and chit chats while they slaughter a pig in front of everyone with skill saws.
Hell yeah. Of course it's skill saws, yeah. They've still got wood from when they were doing tree service. Unlicensed tree service, by the way, I have to mention.
The things on like 3 extension cords.
Yes.
One of them is wound together with electrical tape. It's not electrical tape.
And-
No,
Yeah.
it's just black duct tape, but they call it electrical tape.
It's electric.
The electric.
But yeah, that's interesting. But that has like the,
It's
I don't think
so
it's not that weird to
Mithraic.
expect. Is it? But
No, it's not. It would be a bowl. It would have to be a bowl, which they do that too.
By the way, I want to talk about the Mithras cult later, because I do like the David Ulancey explanation as to what the story is with it, which is very interesting. I want to get into that,
Yes,
but that's
it
later.
is.
But okay, so what was I just saying? We were talking about, so Newman, and then also, so the first or second king of Rome. So after Romulus, was he the first king? Romulus was the first king of Rome, I assume, right?
And then Numa was the second. Yeah.
Numa was the second king. Numa is the one who formalized the religion of Rome, and he created the ministries, or the priesthoods rather. And in the formation, it stayed until the very end of Rome, as we basically, or at least until it became a explicitly Christian thing, which is pretty impressive that this lasted like over 1,000 years. And again, I don't think they had like they didn't have like scriptures that denoted how it all worked. It was sort of just a living body.
It's almost like the state is a religious, and it's a religious structure. It's a religious institution. You are lending as much, you are foregoing as much, how you say, credulity and like suspending disbelief when you're going with what the state narrative is, when you're going to go enact your civic duty, whatever the fuck. It's this same thing that's always been. It's when you refuse to acknowledge that there is something greater than a governing body. How about the thing that put everything here, the unmoved mover, as Aristotle would say, I think. Like, the state religion is the most insane, scary, ugly thing about Rome. The fact that it's so shamelessly tied up with the state. There is no separation.
And they did it beautifully through Aeneas. Right? Because Aeneas had the Etruscan gods. He interacted with all of them, basically took the Greek gods, gave them Roman-esque names, and then was the ideal Roman citizen who lived by their standards of being a human, and it tied the two together perfectly, where it was like, no,
Yeah.
your religion is being a human. It's real. You better act it right.
Interesting. Yeah, so during the monarchistic era, and by the way, again, the Jesse Benedict Carter take is like this is when they were their most pure, and I think part of his take too is like it's kind of like almost like a Hans Hermann Hoppe-esque take where like under the fact that it was a monarchy, it sort of first of all mirrored, this is something really interesting I thought he was saying, which is like, so they had at the very beginning of the monarchistic era of Rome, the primary gods worshipped was not Jupiter, by the way. One of the most primaries was Vesta, of course, the Vestal Virgins, we know. Also Janus, which is like the door god.
Of passageways,
They
gateways.
love fucking walls.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
dude.
true. Yeah.
The only thing they love more than the wall is putting a hole in it and creating double doors or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so this is something interesting. So the door is Janus, and Vesta is the goddess of the hearth and the home. And so something I thought was really interesting that that Jesse Benedict Carter said was that the reason why this formation was like so effective in creating like a mirror between the private and the public was because by they made a temple to Janus and to Vesta. So it's, and then the
Boys,
head
we're gonna
of
need the biggest door of all time.
right, yeah, and for the good Mexicans to come through.
And
But
the biggest hinges,
yeah,
naturally.
there was a hinge
No
god
more
too, by the way.
Greeks, only
The hinge.
Etruscans.
We actually, it's funny. We were talking. I'm sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
Let
We
me
were
just
talking
finish
about
this
the
side, and then
yeah.
we'll go straight on to that.
Of course, yeah. I'm sorry.
But okay, so so this is the thing. So we should maybe dip our toe into what the home worship of the average Roman was, which is they every day when they left the fucking house, they would pray to Janus, the door god, for letting them pass through it. You know, basically.
Don't let the store hit me on the way out. Don't let the store hit me in the ass on the way out. Don't let the store hit me in the ass on the way out.
And again, every day when they warmed at the hearth, or when they contemplated their home, they were praying to Vesta. And so and we'll get a little more into the more intricacies of the home worship in a bit. But what Jesse Benedict Carter pointed out was by mirroring. Oh, and also the father is the pater familiaris of the home. And so in the earliest formation of Rome as a series of clans that bound together under one pater familiaris, the king, there's this really beautiful symmetry between the Roman state and the way that the Romans behaved before it existed. And the way that they worshipped. And so this was like really, it was super effective to them to want to make this arrangement. And worth mentioning here, and in his book too, also he points out that once it becomes the Roman Republic and they've thrown out the king, the series of monarchs, because arguably because they've been usurped by Etruscans, by the way, was the real reason why they decided to get rid of the monarchy. But at this point, when they started becoming an entrenched political class, in the form of the Senate, this is really when you start to see that this class structure that is so endemic to Roman discourse, this idea of the plebeian and the aristocrats, this really only happens after the Roman Republic era begins, and it's kind of absent during the Roman monarchy days. So I believe what Jesse Benedict Carter is making the libertarian argument here that in monarchy it's more there's more egalitarianism than in a representative government, which is counterintuitive to our modern sensibilities, of course. But that's pretty
Correct.
fucking based.
Yeah, and just to add evidence to it, like, so when the pater familiaris would pray, it was his family and all the slaves of the household would come too. Like,
course,
everybody
yeah.
was on the same footing. They were allowed to pray together. And then, like, we'll talk later on, the cult of Bacchus and, like, the whole debacle there happened because they were like, nope, the slaves are practicing with us. We got to stop that. And like, it's just very funny to see like, oh no, there's now a hierarchy within the religion that no longer existed. It's almost weird how like as soon as religion has power, they put it in a caste system and a structure to keep the most sacred people away from everybody else. Literally every religion.
Interesting stuff. Okay, so now that we get to that, we should talk about like the home god. So there's also the other thing where I was talking before about how an ancient Roman would sort of laugh at us about our like sort of personal devotion towards religion or whatever on like our individual self. This is the thing that I was saying before about this being like very alien to them, is very true in the sense that they did have like a divine metaphorical representation for their sense of individuality, and this came in the form of the genius, which this is where the word genius comes from, of course. The genius is like it's like the ability of an individual to like it's your genius. So like it's how you divinely represent your individual abilities, I guess. So when you did something that set you apart from others, because remember, this is a very collective society. Everyone sort of thinks about each other in relation to how they relate to you. So when you do something to set yourself apart, like say you did something really clever or brave or something, that is reflective of your genius. And in the home, every family basically had like a shrine dedicated to the family's collective genius. And it still was collectivized, interestingly. So even this ideation of individuality was sort of filtered through the lens of the family. You know what I mean? And this is a really interesting thing. Whereas in moderns, particularly in post-enlightenment liberal West society, it's all about the genius of the individual. I mean, it's literally there is arguably a cult of it today, when you see people elevated like fucking retard Elon Musk and other such midwits who happen to be rich.
Yeah,
but and then but who's gonna say no to them? They literally fucking all call themselves geniuses. You get people carrying water for them online with no benefit to them.
No,
Hey,
right.
Listen, you pause long enough to give an answer that doesn't answer anything, you're a genius.
I guess so. Yeah, you're right. But
you see that Peter Thiel thing where he like just totally
the one where when the girl asked him about AI use in Israel. Yeah, that's a fucking hilarious clip. Yeah, some girl asked, not little girl, she's a college student or something, but some girl
Mr. Thiel.
Yeah, she goes, so I'm not gonna make this aside too much, but basically she says like, what do you think about the ethics of Israel using AI to fake war crimes committed against the Israelis by the Palestinians in order to justify further aggression towards the Palestinians? And he looks like remember that scene in Seinfeld where George eats the Kung Pao chicken and he's sweating and his boss is asking him questions. He looks like he's lying. It's that, dude.
Oh, that's terrible.
You can watch him starting to condensate.
It's very good out. That's awesome.
So funny. It's so funny.
Shit.
But anyway,
fuck you, Peter.
We'll never
see
take
you,
your
it's
money,
on site.
bitch. Gay asshole. We're not that kind of history homo.
What's funny is one of the strongest holds of that culturalism you still see, like of the individual household rather than like the whole is Italians. Like when you think about it, like this is how we cook our sauce. This is how we do the 7 fishes. This is what
it's the genius.
Yeah, exactly. They still have that idea. Like why? That's what we do in our family, which is kind of
wow, that's true. I never thought of it that way before.
That is the admirable thing. Is they care more about fulfilling the rituals and sacrifices and the modes of worship that their fathers engaged in before them. Ancestors on they would pray. They would not worship their ancestors or but they would
the Romans
venerate.
would very explicitly.
Maybe I'm trying to say it's not worship so much as it is a what do you say, convening, or
Elevating. Yeah, they sort of elevated them. Yeah, yeah. Or honored them.
venerating.
Yeah.
Venerating,
Venerate.
I
That's
guess,
actually the
is
word
the
I think that's used. Yeah.
Which
Um,
again, you see, is the Catholic Church is the only Christian religion that really does that, where it's like, no, they're lowercase saints, so we can ask for help from them. Like, whereas other ones, it would be
yeah.
almost praying to a false idol. Whereas again, the Italian base goes, nah, let's pray to the family.
yeah. True. But what's it called? So yeah, they did have this idea that all of your ancestors went into some sort of collective spirit, essentially, and this was they were
Groovy.
called Mades. Which I don't know, I don't remember what the etymology of it is at all, but basically there was this idea that when you died, you would sort of go into this collective dead, and in which you would aid your family um from beyond the grave, essentially,
Hmm.
particularly if your family was honoring you correctly.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of emphasis based around like how you were buried, how the rituals were conducted after you were gone. And of course, this is another thing, was they had this idea that they were Lemuria, I believe they were called, or
Lem.
Lemuria is like what the name of the holiday was where they would honor these guys. But it was this the idea that like it was basically like a poltergeist, like you know, like a ghost
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
came back because he was mad that he wasn't being honored correctly.
Hmm.
And of course, you know, you could make the case that this was sort of like, oh geez, something fell, must be granddad's mad at us or something, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? And I'm sure a lot of this goofy superstitious sort of was going on.
Oh,
um
absolutely. There's a lot of tracing back. Like, we don't know where the original vampire idea came from, but the
Jews.
Greeks.
Let me just answer that one for you.
No, that's the modern adaptation where we went. That's where it
Okay,
came
all right.
from.
All right, yeah, yeah,
Prior to that, they didn't. But looking at Greeks, they would like nail certain coffins shut because they were like, this dude came out and was fucking with me. So like they went
Right.
through it. They were like, if you do not handle this properly, and then during World War II, it was a big thing because they didn't have time to bury the dead properly. So you'd go and just see stakes through dead bodies because they didn't want vampires.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, Greeks had a whole bunch of weird shit. They had like lamias and shit, all kinds of weird shit too. That's a whole other episode.
On that topic, Nosferatu, pretty good. Pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Speaking of vampiric Jews.
Are we
um
back to the AI clip?
the AI
The-
clip.
I think what Israel thinks.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. He does kind of look like Nosferatu, actually, Peter Thiel, now that you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Dead.
Max Shrek, the original
They-
Peter, the
The
original
only reason there's
the original Nosferatu, of course.
the only reason there's any color in Peter Thiel's face is because you have to slap him very, very hard on both cheeks before any
Wake him
appearance
up.
on camera. Otherwise, it's just milk
Yeah.
white.
Well, you
Um,
should see how flushed his face is when he's just thrown a twink off of a roof.
It's a
You've
lot of
never
heavy
seen
lifting.
him.
Well, you know, I don't know about that, Bobby. Twinks aren't known for being heavy.
For him, it is.
Well, for
And
him,
twink.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah. You
my
know what?
back
Yeah.
hurts.
Okay, enough about Peter Thiel.
So you talked about the ancestors. The other fun part is the Lares,
Yeah, the
Which is-
Lares, yes.
just your
that
household
has that
spirits.
the household spirits, but it actually goes back much further than that, and it actually was the protectors of the land. And it became sort of transmogrified through a time, through like the sort of statification of the religion, because it harkens back to a time when the average person had more of a stake in the land itself because they themselves were owners of the land. And come time when they were in the Republic era, now they're just like literally have a shitty apartment in the city of Rome now. And so yeah, there's not much pride in being, you know, your guardian spirits of the land with that. But this has now been theologically reworked in order to be like the protectors of your apartment.
Yeah, it's fucking your blink cam.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. This is you pray to the Lares in order to make sure that the black Amazon driver doesn't put an empty box where you're on your
PS5
driver.
should
I
be.
just where you're like, you know, Zoom recorder or whatever it should be.
Pray to the gods of porch piracy to protect me in
that's the
these
Lares,
times.
dude.
Now, not to be confused with my personal favorites and Eric Nagel's personal favorite, the Penates, which they had a subset of gods just for the pantries.
Of course.
And you were talking about like the deifying of someone who epitomizes an idea, and boy, if we need a new Penates, I know where to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely like shitty goy slop foods that would be in the pantry because they're not fresh.
No,
And they're
not
like
at
just
all.
packed with gross, weird experimental flavors that why would anyone ever eat this? I have an Instagram account that where I give uninformed opinions about it. um in order to justify me wanting to stuff my fucking face.
I mean, much like the same way, it did evolve just praying you didn't get food poisoning. That's
True.
how
Okay,
they
you're
got
right.
into it. Like him and, but no, the best way for me to think about the Roman religion on a personal level is just OCD that nobody corrects. They're
So
like, okay,
true.
Yeah,
we got to
yeah.
knock 9 times or the door god's gonna get us.
Like literally though,
They're just like,
it
okay,
literally is. It's neo-paganism. The OCD is neo-paganism.
yeah. And we got rid of that, and we saw the OCD rise, did we not?
I
Yeah.
think you're right.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, and like
Oh
literally,
shit, it's him.
and the Pentares, they were just like, ah, God, I keep eating rotten food. Please, please don't make me shit. Please don't make me shit blood.
Again,
Instead,
because
you
I don't
just
know if you
throw
know
up
what the
once.
bathroom's like in ancient Rome. By the way,
Oh no.
they all share a sponge that they wipe their asses with after taking a dump.
Left
And
hand.
yes, I'm serious.
Yes.
But they did have running water and toilets.
Amazing.
So suck on
They
that.
did have
India.
running water, which is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Suck on that, India.
Right? Yeah. They still haven't figured that shit out now. In 2025, our year of our Lord.
Yeah, exactly. And the Lord's never going there until you guys put in plumbing.
I don't think, yeah, they're very thoroughly pagan there. So that's where
Yeah.
he's needed most of all there.
And
Yeah.
one other point, like we talked about augury, we talked about the studying of entrails. That was something every commoner kind of learned how to do initially.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so that was where a heavy amount was put on because anybody could go outside and look at birds, right? And
Of course.
all you need sometimes is just a justification. I don't know if you guys know any Italians, but I have an Italian father, and boy, we'll debate until we make a decision what the right decision is. We'll post analyze until it's time to make the next decision. And it's like, if I could just be like, nah, I saw 7 birds, you made the right call. That would make life so much. So sometimes you just need to assuage.
Yeah, you need to
mental
return to
illness.
tradition on that one.
Exactly.
I think.
Yeah, it would help life.
Yeah, maybe that's how we're gonna get through. Every guy knows that that argument you have with your girlfriend of where we're going to eat tonight. Now we
Right,
just got to
it's-
look at how many birds is on top of this place or that place. How many birds are on top of the Golden Arches or the fucking Burger King?
Sorry, babe.
Listen.
The Panati said you're gaining a little bit of weight, so we're doing keto tonight.
I'm getting a
Uh,
transmission from the Penates. Wait. It's no, you get nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have Penates at home.
Exactly.
Yeah, the panates at home, and it's just fucking. It's just
Frozen
a couple
Penates.
olives and a stale piece of bread.
And a goat liver.
And then one of my favorite practices, I don't know if you guys covered this. Did you cover the defecations
No, what's
or the
that?
cursed tablets? So basically, if the people of Rome had special requests to the gods or spirits, they would write it down on a tablet, put something personal, like a sacrifice, in with it, and then bury
So
it.
it's like a
at
death
cro-
note.
No, bury it at a crossroad. It was literally just summoning a crossroad demon. Like that's the exact same
Interesting.
process, and it started in ancient Rome.
Wow. Well, I would imagine that I mean, it's possible, and I don't want to minimize the implication of satanic forces at play here, of course, but it's possible that the Christian mythological representation of the Crossroads demon may have had some sort of earlier basis in the memory, collective cultural memory of that being a pagan practice.
Or there were a lot of wops in the South. That's where we got
That
the
too,
idea
yeah.
of crossroad demon. I know that.
Well, you see, the more who is that that black guitar playing
Lenny
fella?
Kravitz.
He done sold his soul. Get him.
You see, the Moors did
Robert
so much
Johnson.
fucking Roberto
Johnsonino.
yeah,
Johnsonino.
Johnsonino, yeah. There we go. That was pretty good. Um,
All he plays is Dominic the Donkey. All he plays is the Tarantella song.
yeah.
And he yells
what
the whole
else?
time. You know this is about stomping on tarantulas.
Okay,
The Moors
so
had so many freaking tarantulas running around. They had to invent a dance to get rid of them all.
It's like that Twink Patrick you guys got.
do they actually have tarantulas in Italy?
I don't know, man. My
Yeah, they
cousin's
do.
having
It's
a
basically
meltdown.
Africa, so
That's
yeah,
what they call
probably.
pickpockets.
My cousin's having a meltdown about Trump and is looking at migrating there through my grandfather's heritage. So I'll let you know in like 6 months.
Oh
See if
man,
she
that is
follows
so
through.
funny, dude.
That'd
He's
be the
gonna do
first
a-
time she followed through on anything in her life, but we'll see.
Dude-
Right, yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Is there an Italian version of that? What do the Israelis do? The home.
Aliyah, yeah.
No,
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
opposite. They're like, you better prove it. You better have more blood than would have counted in the South, my friend. Like,
Yeah. It's not Aliyah, it's Aliyahs.
All he is. All he
In
use.
Italian, the Italian American goes back to Italy, like in that episode of Sopranos, and makes an ass of himself in front of real Italians. Yeah, okay.
Buongiorno.
Commentatori. Yeah, like in the Sopranos episode. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, so we'll talk about the Cybelian books now. That's important.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
a
at
wacky
the
bit.
end of the era of the Roman monarchy, which it must be mentioned, this is now the Tarquin what do you call that? Dynasty, the Tarquin dynasty, which was actually they were foreigners, much like the in
The
ancient,
Etruscans.
well, they were Etruscans, but I'm just saying, like, much like the Greeks were in charge in Egypt, in the Cleopatra era, there was an Etruscan dynasty in charge of Rome at this time. And obviously, this was going to result in an uprising, of course. And but before that happened, there's a probably not true story. And by the way, also, Jesse Benedict Carter goes really deep on this, and I want to touch on this a little bit as well. But so there's this probably apocryphal story of this wise woman from Greece who came to the final Tarquin king of Rome, and said, "Hey, I have these 9 books. They're written by the oracles, the finest oracles of Greece, and I'd be happy to sell it to you for X amount of sesterces or whatever. I don't know how much it was." And he's like, "No, we're good. We have all of the Etruscan wisdom we need here. Thank you very much." And she goes, "All right, fine. It'd be terrible if this just happened to fall in the fire." And she throws 3 of them in the fire. And then she goes, "Hey, I'll still sell you the other 6." And he goes, "No, fuck you. I'm good. I don't want it." And so she throws another 3 in, and now it's like a Scooby-Doo almost. Like it's a cartoon where he's going like, "Oh geez, what did I do? I messed up."
Oh,
And he's
there
like, "All
was
right, fine, I'll
9.
buy the other 3."
Now there's
For the
3.
same price.
Yeah,
Yes.
what a dumbass.
Honestly, yeah, just buy them all. But so these things were called the Cybelian. Hang on, let's actually see. I think Cybelian is not right. It's called
Sibylline.
Sibylline. Thank you, because
Mm.
Sibyl is the name of the goddess that supposedly
Mm-hmm.
the wisdom came from. And so the Sibylline books. Thank you for telling me that. They became immediately became the most important thing in not just the religion of Rome, which now is, by the way, so intertwined with the state of Rome that they're inseparable. But it does indeed become immensely powerful and important to the government of Rome as well. So now let's take a quick detour. We forgot to do this earlier, but let's just describe the way that the King Numa set up the priesthood. So he made for himself the position Rex Sancrorum, which is denoted by the word Rex, which means king, by the way, which at first was the most important person in the priesthood, primarily because it had to do with the calendar. Which, by the way, Numa was he was famous for having been the father, basically, of the Roman calendar, essentially, and which is why he became as so well renowned or whatever. But also, he established each god would have a flaminus so basically each god had its own priesthood, and there'd be one guy who was the head of it, and he was called the Flamen because he was flaming gay, I assume. Like all priests.
the Flamen Martalialis, right? Was
Yes,
Mars,
that's the one
example.
for Mars. Yeah, exactly. And but there was one for each god or goddess or whatever, but they were sort of secondary in importance. They were sort of just like the other thing you got to understand is these were really important and powerful positions in the government, because again, there's no beginning and end where the government and the religion begins and ends. So
just not to sound all communist in the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat.
Go on.
On the poor level, what we talked about was the practice. For the elites, religion was a way to justify their power.
Right.
So the entire principle for anyone of ruling class, we'll say, was basically the American dream today. You get a good job. You'll pick out which version of the bureaucracy you're going to join. You'll go do that for not, you know what I mean? That's your justification for power. So a lot of this was set up to be like, oh, this is the reason why I get to say these things. And the reason why they got rid of the Rex title is because the people of Rome were convinced they never wanted a king again, so they couldn't use it. So if you notice, Julius Caesar specifically fought to be the Pontifex Maximus because that was as high as he could go.
Right.
Sorry,
and
I didn't mean to jump in there on you.
No. Good. Thanks for bringing that up, because the other position is, of course, the Pontifex Maximus, and that quickly became the most important, particularly in the Republican era, because, and again, so what's it called? Jesse Benedict Carter goes so far as to speculate that the fact, I sort of said this before, but basically the usage of the Sibylline books was, and we have records of this, by the way, much of them were in an effort to sort of naturalize Greek gods into the Roman canon. And in doing so, by the way, I believe their belief was that this was more Hellenizing the entire system, essentially, by incorporating all these Greek ideas, and, as he puts it, doing violence to the original gods that they are synthesizing them from. So, by the way, I should mention that this is a very good example of what is now known as, I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but it's now known as Hegelian synthesis. This idea that there's these two things that they come together, they synthesize, and there's aspects of both, but it's actually a third thing that's different than both, if you get what I'm saying. So once the Romans took in the characteristics of the Greek gods, they made it into something more virulent, in order to further self-justify this expansionist and also calcify the hierarchical sort of system that this all was representative of, essentially. And Jesse Benedict Carter is basically says in fairly uncertain terms, fairly no uncertain terms, that basically this was like basically a conspiracy in order to like create this very hierarchical society. And this was a Greek idea, this republicanism, by the way. It's worth mentioning. This was not like literally we there was hundreds of years of precedent of Rome being a monarchy, and all of a sudden all these Greek gods are now being canonized. And it's all through this Greek book of wisdom that that has been being consulted within the halls of the Republic, or sorry, of the Senate.
I found these gold tablets, and
It's
only
literally
I
that.
can read
It's
them.
literally that. And he goes so far as to say, I don't believe that the last king, Tarquin king of Rome, is the guy who got these books. I think it was something that came about during the Republican era, and they made that story up bullshit in order to be like, oh, it's from our earlier period, and we've always had them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? But really,
absolutely.
they were just using it to make everything more Hellenized and also more hierarchical and have more power for themselves, frankly.
Is
And
now when we get to Mithras?
No, Mithras is after Jesus.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
Yeah.
well, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
no,
Sorry,
no, no,
Bobby.
no, no. No, you're absolutely right. And I think the way, like, why this was able to happen so easily is because of Aeneas. And I hate to keep harping on him, but he was
I'm
a
into it, yeah.
actual historic figure that the
Right.
Romans believed in, and he had interacted with all these Greek gods. And his recounting was his experience, so they could easily just be like, "Oh, you just got it a little wrong. It's kind of like this," and that's how you land on the third principle. But also, he was so revered that they had all this artwork of his stories. So
Mhm.
they had pictures of their Roman king interacting with these Greek gods. Now, of course, they gave them new names and restructured them. But what the Romans did brilliantly was, like you said, they made the gods practical. Like Zeus
Yeah.
wasn't, it was almost like you see God Old Testament, New Testament. Like Jupiter wasn't out there just fucking around and pretending he's a duck
Yeah.
to impregnate people. He was like, "Oh, I have to keep the order." And it was
Yeah.
100% a rewriting to justify a hierarchic system.
Right.
As
The
in,
Greek interpretation is filled with whimsy,
yeah,
and there's
It's
no
fun.
whimsy in the Roman version.
No.
yeah. The Romans, the gods that they you know invent are just analogies for passions and potentialities and powers. I think
Right.
I don't know if it was in that book, Scott, the Numa book, but I heard it said somewhere that the genius of any given individual or group is their power and potentiality.
Yes.
Uh,
It
and
was that book. Yeah.
yeah, so there's something, and I can't remember where I came across the term, but uh, uh, henotheism, essentially the idea of being sure in your own, quote unquote, sure in your own belief or paradigm of God or
Theology.
spirit theology, but um, always being able to say, oh yeah, that thing that you believe in that has literally maybe one thing in common with the thing I believe in, it's the same thing. You guys just looked at it funny. All right,
Very
now
pointedly,
acquiesce.
very pointedly, I've myself read Caesar's commentaries on Gaul, and he very nakedly goes, "Oh yeah, I met these Romans. They worship Artemis. They worship so and so. They just call it this other fucking thing." And he says it, and it's so nakedly self-delusional, and it's right
Yeah.
on the page, his own words. Of course, he writes it in the third person to make it seem more authoritative,
Hmm.
but it's clearly his thinking. And also he goes so far as to say, yeah, but they got it messed up and they do this weird barbaric human sacrifice stuff that we don't do. That's fucking
No.
crazy. It's called cuckoo, a little bit of crazy. Which yeah, they were late to the party of stopping that. Although
And
again,
what
you could say that the Romans never stopped either. I mean, they literally killed Jesus.
Yeah,
what they were
they were.
also good at is during the combination, giving up the shit that didn't matter.
Yes.
Being like, "We'll take your tradition. We'll take your ritualistic thing, but now we get to rewrite what he means."
Yeah, and make
As
it
long as
in
it-
service of our structural societal structure rather.
and more
Um,
often than not, any sort of ritualized method of displacing blame or displacing cause and effect for any group of people. If it serves the purpose of the empire, then why not? Because
Right.
nothing is. I think the Romans looked at the Christians as atheistic.
Atheists, yeah, because
Yeah,
they denied
ironically.
our gods. Yeah.
Yeah. How
Just
dare they
one
deny the gods of shoelaces, aglets,
Yeah.
fingernail, the god of hangnails, the god of butane, the god of teaspoons. Go fuck
Are you
yourself.
just naming things around the room right now?
Mm,
Yeah.
the god of hangnails.
Yeah. Yeah, I
the
have one
god of
too
a
right now,
noose and
actually.
shaky stool.
Yeah. But
So
yeah,
I actually just one fun point on that tangent
yeah.
was I thought how they handled the Celtics was particularly fun. So they had this giant bathhouse for a Celtic god Lugus,
Mhm.
and they also had Minerva at a bath, and the Romans went in and redecorated it. Had a couple parts of their legend. We're like, see, we told you, it's the same thing. It fits, and just literally made it their own. But my favorite is so a lot of Saturnalia, which is what the pagan part of Christmas that everybody talks about was, came from the
Mhm.
Celtics. They were the ones who initially started by celebrating evergreen trees. So
Mm.
as we go through this Christmas season, blame an Irish person. I'm not saying to sucker punch one, but nobody's gonna be mad if you do.
Well, I'm an Irish. That's my good part. First of
Up
all,
the
Yeah, me
raw,
too.
baby.
but second of all, I do want to be actually on this, but Celts weren't restricted to simply to Ireland and Scotland, although they're now most famously associated with it. But the Gauls were Celts. There was people in like Anatolia where there were Celts in Anatolia and stuff. And it's actually more of like a um cultural sort of thing rather than like a ethnic or it's like a cultural denotation rather than an ethnic one. But yeah, but
Yeah,
you're right though that a lot of the what's up?
I heard a lot of the Celts were black, which I think gives
We
us the
was Celts and shit.
justification. Yeah, yeah, exactly. We was Celts, and now we can say it.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
black
ginger
Irish.
ginger is an anagram, isn't it?
Yep,
It
they knew
is,
it.
it
They
is,
knew it.
yeah.
They're like, yeah, yep.
Oh man. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about
Oh,
so
shit.
again during the Sibylline era, during this era of the Republic, uh this is like, and again, and Carter's like beside himself because he's so upset that they're like destroying their old beautiful theology, practical theology, by incorporating, and he goes, and they even put Greek gods on the Capitoline Hill in the
No.
Palatine Hill inside the Pomerium. Can you believe it?
How
No.
dare they?
But it's worth saying though, because this was like shocking. If you were paying attention, which they weren't, this should have been a shocking turn to
Mhm.
see that how far we've fallen. And this sort of opens up this other line of conversation. I think I sent you guys a YouTuber by whose name is like Tribunates or something. I can't remember. Shouts out to him. He got this idea in my head. But there's this old um there's this sort of old 18th century like Enlightenment era meme, as it were, that the idea is that it was only the plebeians who were very faithful about religion, and it was the elites were all actual atheists, who were scoffing, looking down
Mhm.
their noses at the plebeians who are so faithful or whatever. But this is not historical. And it's not it's not the opposite either, by the way. There's the interesting thing is, and this is something we've been sort of harping on throughout the whole episode, but the fact that the Roman government is so deeply entrenched into the religious practices, this in effect meant that the religion of the entire Rome, all Rome, was the worship of the political status quo, essentially.
Yes.
So, in
Yes.
light of that, it's most likely that some of the most fervent religious feelings were felt by the people who were the recipients of the power that was bestowed to them by this religious slash political system.
1,000,000% best evidence by Julius Caesar. when he was trying to become the Pontifex Maximus, where he had to try to get Mark Antony to set him up, and the people didn't want it. You know what I mean? He had to sway them.
Yeah, the Lupercalia incident. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And we talked about that during our series, but
they go back to the Caesar as king episode. I think the episode title is Julius Caesar, literally me.
Well, boy, that one held up. But like every religion and every government, it starts with a few small, and then it just became everybody has to be involved in some way. And I think that's so fun to watch the hierarchy of Roman religion develop.
Yeah, it's funny. I was. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No,
I was just gonna say.
Go ahead.
I'm stopping.
No, go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna go into a whole other thing. Okay.
Can I interject?
Please.
I was having a little discussion with.
Thing. No, you were actually going to go into something new because
I was. Yeah.
So just basically, you have the Pontifex Maximus, then you have the Pontifices, which was a
the
college.
other priest.
Pontifices.
Basically, their whole job was just to be like, "Hey, man, I need you to justify me doing this. All right, give me a few seconds to write something." And it was just rich people. That was the Harvard, the Ivy League of colleges.
Yeah.
If you couldn't get your kid in there, he would go to the Augurus College, which is where he became a master in studying birds, which is like your son getting a liberal arts degree. It's like, all right, you did what you're supposed to, but nobody's happy. You just did what that plumber's doing better than you.
You got you can get a doctorate in bird law. Is what you can
literally though. Yeah.
Exactly. DO though, not an MD.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Then you had the Flamines, which is just the autistic people. They're like, you super are devoted to this guy. We talked about them.
Yep.
And below them, you had the Vestal Virgins, which we've talked a lot about. I'm assuming we're going to get into the cult a little more later, but basically they were priestesses who were picked young and had to go interpret the hearth.
Like nuns, basically.
But there's a lot more to them too, which is kind of funny. We'll talk about them during the cult. And then my personal favorite is the Haruspices. Those were priests in Haruspice, which is we talked about earlier. But basically, there's no college for that. So they would just fuck around and kill animals and play with their guts until somebody came along and was like, "You're pretty good at that, man." It was just serial killers. They're like, yeah, keep killing. Maybe you'll figure this out one day.
I didn't know that tidbit, actually.
Yeah, so like there's no school. It was just basically like the snake oil salesman.
Hell yes.
You pretty much had to be a competent butcher because, if like you were disemboweling an animal, if the viscera came out chopped up or,
that means the
punctured.
gods didn't take it. Yeah.
Yeah, which just means you're hungover.
But now we have to put this in the terms of how it operated. Because the Pontifex Maximus had to go to the Haruspices every time he had to make a decision. So you've got the most powerful man in the country going to a guy whose only hobby is playing with dead animals, being like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "I don't know, boss." And he's like, "You sure it doesn't say that?" "I don't know, man."
I do think the Haruspices, they were like a lesser. I think there was less prestige associated with it. So I imagine, being that the most important guy in the fucking nation of Rome was going to them, I imagine if they didn't give him the result he was looking for too many times in a row, they were gone.
Oh, absolutely. But just like Trump, he would go and like,
"You're fired."
Caesar would go in and be like, anytime he had a bigger decision, be like, "I consulted the Haruspices. They're on my side.
I have the best people.
They've been telling me that this is the best decision I've ever made about the city of Rome."
Baddest liver they've ever seen.
It's good enough, fat enough for foie gras.
I was like, "You can't have a liver that fatty." They were like, "It's so fatty."
Man.
But by the way, the way that they would go about this, the divining of what was the Sibylline literature. We're talking about oracles and shit, right? We're talking about ladies who like live
supposedly
above
so we don't know
shit.
what the fuck was in this book. I imagine it's literally just a bunch of scribbles and shit, because
all
every
work
time
and no play.
Yeah, literally, because every time, I forget, this is important. I'm glad you brought this up, Patrick, because I fucking skated over this without getting into too much of it. Basically, every time they needed an answer, they just went in and they go, "Okay, the thing we were already going to do." We consulted the books, and they want us to do the thing that we already wanted to do.
Whew, that was
And
close.
as a way to be the people's man, in addition to that, he was like, it says it in the books, and I talked to your animal guy. So I'm all in. That's how Caesar got with it.
Yeah.
But going back a little
And a
bit to
comet.
Greek heritage. Yeah, exactly. Oh, look, it worked.
A comet.
Yeah.
But the way going back to the Greeks, the way their oracles would work is they had these methane shoots.
Yeah.
So basically they were just doing fucking
Tripping
methane
nuts.
whippets. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
just being like, yeah, this worked. And it worked out enough. It was like, do you ever have a kid who played sports with you that was just super baked all the time, but somehow it always worked out for him? I
Yeah.
loved kids like that. That's what they just made it a religion, and maybe we should worship. Sean
Well, the beauty
LaMarca.
of it was, and the fact that it was all bullshit and not based off of genuine revelation, like our Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Amen.
But the reason,
John
the
definitely
beauty
didn't
of
do
it,
methane whippets.
yeah, I don't. Maybe he did. I don't know. But no, he was one of the Essenes, I think. So probably not. They would never have taken drugs. But what's it called? But the thing is, the beauty of it is like if they were wrong, they just go, oh well, you fucked up. You know what I mean? Like they
misinterpreted
never
what
have
I
to
said.
prove that the Oracle ever knew shit. They just go, "Oh, it was on you, though." So,
It's as far from like living in an objective reality,
yeah,
believing in an objective truth. Like
Yeah.
they seek nothing.
No logos.
None.
Yeah.
Logos has left the building.
Yeah, well,
Logos
he
has
came
left
later. He came back later, I guess.
Oh, he's pissed.
But yeah. So okay, we said all that to say so now we're in the era of Julius Caesar. And yes, Bobby, you mentioned that Julius Caesar himself became Pontifex Maximus. Oh yeah, this is the other thing I was gonna say real quick when we were having that little game where we were pretending to talk over each other. Pretending. Bing. But what's it called? I was talking to a friend of mine who listens to the show, by the way. Shouts out. I'm not gonna say his name. He's trying to go incognito. But
You know who you
he
are.
was saying like he had this view that I was talking about before, this idea that the rich or the like the powerful people in Rome were non-believers and it was just the stupid poors. And I'm like, no. Do you not remember in Caesar's commentaries on Gauls how he felt he had this super strong relationship with the goddess Fortuna, by which I mean he was lucky.
Yeah.
But in the mind of someone imbued in that society, that means that there's this semi-anthropomorphic woman who's looking down at Julius Caesar and going, yes, this time you won the battle because I smiling on you, dog. I got you. And so it is indeed a very attractive sort of meme that comes out of, by the way, the 18th century or the Enlightenment era. This idea that these I think this is I believe like Thomas Jefferson thought this too, by the way, was the idea that it was like there was these non-believers in charge in Rome and it was the stupid poors who were the opiate of the masses, were the religion, you know.
But who believes in the state more than
the
those-
state,
yeah.
the people with the levers of power, of course. It doesn't stand up to the sniff test. Yeah. Yeah, so I say that, I'll say all that to say we know the story of Caesar and how he died, but we mentioned before the comet during the funeral. And this was the birth.
Psyop.
Yeah, Mark Antony Sive. This became the birth of, which, by the way, Carter, he characterizes the birth of the imperial cult and the cults of the emperors as being the renaissance of Roman religion, and actually says it's actually more authentic than when they were doing this sort of synthesis things with all these Greek gods. Was the idea it was more honest with themselves, that they were very much openly now worshiping the state by way of the emperor. And we could get into the intricacies. Sorry.
No, if you go back to Newman, it kind of makes sense. Like
It does,
is
yeah.
like this guy was the most successful because he's in most
Hello,
in line with the
Jerry.
gods. Exactly. Newman's killing it.
But yeah, so that's very much agree, Bobby. But I was just gonna say, and we can get into the intricacies of. I guess we could do this now, or I don't know if it will become important when we talk about Augustus becoming emperor or not. So maybe we should put a pin in this actual sort of historical stuff, because the process of the Julius Caesar cult becoming a canon, and therefore in a I'll give you a thumbnail sketch of it now, basically. So Caesar, Bobby, you alluded to the Lupercalia stunt earlier
Yeah.
in the episode. And that was sort of Caesar testing the waters as to whether he could become king of Rome. And it was a resounding no, basically, was the answer, because three times the Trinity of Mark Antony tries to put the diadem on his head, and three times the crowd boos, basically, to say no, we don't want him to be king. And this story is very I believe this story weighed heavily on Augustus or Octavian's shoulders, because he was a lot more clever, I think, than Caesar, Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was just lucky. um Octavian was the brains, and he knew that to just make Caesar a god, and therefore he's a god, was foolish. And so he sort of slow played it in a really clever way, in order to, he was considered son of a god. And also the other thing was, this was a new concept, was this idea that there was people who had become gods. So there's Dia is a god in full, like this. So like Poseidon, Mars, Jupiter, whatever. That's Dia. And then
Divas,
and then
right.
Devious, I believe, is a man that has ascended to godhood. So there's this new concept that Caesar brings, Augustus Caesar brings into the, not just their religious lives, but their governmental lives, because again, this is all these things are very linked. So in doing so, this is the real beauty of it, was this allowed them to covertly sort of promote the worship of the emperor in the provinces, in order to actually promote the spread of the empire. And this worked amazingly.
And what I like best is they painted the emperor as an intermediary.
Right.
So like, if you want the gods to intercede, go to worship him, and they'll be on your, and like, it's almost putting him in a middle place where he has to
like
be
the
the middleman and get everything. Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. It really became the Pope.
It became the Pope, yeah. And then also the best thing is that during this era, where during the time of the Imperial cult, guess who was always the honorary fucking Pontifex Maximus? The Emperor.
Of course. That's how it works. Why wouldn't he be if God didn't love him?
Yeah, true. But I mean, it really does raise your eyebrows a little bit when you're like, so you're saying there's a religion that now operates out of Rome, where the Pontifex Maximus is the intermediary between God and man.
And
you're saying
the
this
only one who can do certain practices, and nobody else has to be revealed. Yeah. I see where this is going.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a little. Patrick, your mic's off.
Sorry.
That's
God. So you better watch what you say
Silence.
next. Coming after.
Yeah, that was God. That was God making sure you didn't say something you didn't mean, buddy.
Struck my vocal cords just still. One guy being the intermediary between all people and God, not working. It only didn't work once. I'm sure it is fine now. I'm sure it works just fine now.
Yeah,
they ironed out
footage not found.
It's madness that people will fall into these same pitfalls, these same stumbling blocks, these same ruts of like, let's just direct all of our potential avarice and all of our potential gratitude to a guy, rather than something even more powerful than him. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah.
Again, that's not really. This wasn't my attempt. This wasn't my attempt to try to criticize the.
Leave the Catholics alone.
This is very off guard, Patrick, but you should read some Kierkegaard. I think you'd really like it.
I love Kierkegaard.
I was gonna say, I feel like he's right in your wheelhouse. Maybe we
What's
talked
it
about
called?
this before.
The crowd is a lie.
Exactly.
and things of that. Yeah, hell yeah, brother.
My favorite was when he was debating Kant, and Kant was like, "It's right in the Bible," and he's like, "Yeah, I don't need the Bible. It's called faith, dumbass. Debate that."
I haven't read that
Kant,
thing
what
in
a
years.
cunt.
Yeah.
Well, if we're referring to letters right now, Kant, let me exhibit you.
A cunt. Yeah. All right, well, I'll actually say this in defense of the Catholic Church, in
Please.
that
I'm
the
gonna
putting
pee
it
while you
all under
defend
one
them.
guy. Okay, that's fine. But I do think we were talking last week about or 2 weeks ago about what's it called, Saint Nicholas.
Nicholas, yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that Orthodox priest had something very positive to say, where he was saying, we imitate Saint Nicholas, who imitates Christ, and the idea behind the Pope, the Pontifex Maximus in the Christian Church, is we would imitate him, and he does indeed authentically imitate Christ. We would hope. And I'm going to leave value judgment aside, of course.
We'll leave it there.
But the point, that was the premise behind it, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Hey, everyone's on their path, aren't they?
True.
I'll
But
indulge
anyway.
in a little syncretism right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's really funny how ancient Romans there was the total fluidity between state and celestial powers. I mean, when the world is that small to you as an individual living in 200 BC, everything might as well be as out of your control as it possibly could be.
Right.
You don't we don't I don't think any of us would begrudge people for especially the peons, the plebs, for wanting the state to run as well as it purported to do.
Right.
But people don't know how to speak. People don't have if people don't have the vocabulary, they're likely not ever going to think that way.
Right.
So if you don't remind them that there's something greater than the empire, then they'll never consider it. And we'll get, as we go on in Rome, we'll get to the fact it went west, turned into the Byzantine Empire. There had to be a reckoning with this horrible, ugly, just godless state tarantula that was just spreading across the Mediterranean.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think William was the one who first sort of put this idea in my head, of course, but it was like they were so barbaric that God had to send his only son to die for their sins.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that was kind of a big deal. I wonder where they got the idea of just kind of like using this religion as a facade and a way of controlling people and justifying like being a perpetual victim.
It's older than.
I wonder if there was a group of people that made a big impact in there. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
They're like, oh, this worked out well.
A theoretical ethnic group.
On a totally opposite, on a totally disparate subject, is it true that 1/10 of the Roman population was Jewish? Was Judaic? Is that correct?
I've heard that those numbers came from them, and they're very, very exaggerated based on
practicality. Seems high. Yeah.
Seems a little high.
Yeah.
Things like censuses have different numbers, but yeah.
Sure. So anyway, I really wanted to get us to the point with the Imperial cult, and now I want to do a little. Well, just for fun, we'll discuss some of the fun cults and their practices throughout because again, this is they all had very, very interestingly varied practices. I mean, the sacrifice was sort of a constant throughout all of them, but each one had their own interesting sort of individual methodologies. Yeah, exactly. And they all came from the origins of where the church or where the cult would all originally came from.
Absolutely. Now we got to the Imperial cult, which was like the height of worshiping Julius Caesar as a god. He was this army guy. And do you guys know who the Sali were? because this is my favorite class of priests. Because even Romans had draft
Refresh
dodgers.
me.
So they were basically priests of Mars for the elite that weren't good fighters. So before and after battle, they would go out and do ritualistic dances. So it was basically like, if you have a gay son who can't fight, yeah, he's going to be a cheerleader. It was the original cheerleader class, which makes me laugh so hard. Just being like, God damn it, I'm raising a Solly.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't know about that one. That's interesting.
That's like the Winkta in the
the Indians. Yeah. The Feather Indians. Yeah.
More like Twinkta, am I right?
Hey,
that's where the word comes from.
Is it really?
Yeah, Winkta.
I thought it was because they got stuffed like Twinkies, but that makes more sense.
Yeah. Here's a rule of thumb: don't name your son Pretty Face or whatever. He's not gonna have his eyes on the prize. All right.
Yeah, he's not gonna become the guy who brings in all the deerts.
Meet my son, Sperm Catcher. No, God damn it.
Wait. That might not have been a good idea.
What's it called? So okay, there's some of the more notable ones. Yeah, okay. So throughout the history, of course, they all many of them came into practice when they became in contact with. In fact, that era of the Republic era, there was like this real sort of almost troubling trends that every time the Roman army would conquer a new area, they would come back with a new god that the Romans would have to worship, essentially. But the thing is
the people yearn for spirit, Scott. The people yearn for spiritual worship.
They did, but the reason being is because this was the time period in which they were so deeply ingrained in this social structure where they're peons, they're plebeians, And the other thing was, a lot of these plebeians were basically like kept women, essentially. They had no like trade. They sat around all day and waited for the next festival where they would be given money. And then they literally which by the way, they're constantly, because there's so many religious fucking what's it called? Festivals all the fucking time.
And just to take it to modern century, that was the rich people's job to keep the power, like to put on these festivals. And if you look
welfare,
super churches,
or what do you call that? Prosperity gospel.
Yeah, exactly. Check out our 6-hour Christmas special with fucking the Rockettes, because we want you to keep donating.
Yeah. But that's the thing. So all these plebeians, they would literally just be like, "Oh, sick! It's the festival of something. We have money again." You know what I mean? So they're in like a gilded cage, essentially. They have like this. Their life's never going to change. And is it any surprise that when someone like Julius Caesar comes along and says, "Hey, I'd like to give more power to you guys," everyone loves the guy.
Bread circus, and we can pick a guy to behead every couple weeks. Sure.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
You had me at beheading.
So the couple of the weird ones, ISIS came to the Roman Empire by way of Egypt, which they had sort of made it a functional alliance with. I don't think they actually conquered it.
A functional alliance.
Yeah, they fucked their way into their fucking good graces.
Where does the Mujahideen come in?
They're basically everyone who's fighting against the empire, I would imagine. So ISIS had ISIS was a female-oriented god or goddess, I suppose. And it became basically like the women's religion for a long time in Rome proper, for like particularly for upper class Roman women. But one of the funny things was that one of the surviving sort of religious artifacts that made it to its Roman translation was that the priests of ISIS all had their nuts cut off. And this was like a big controversy amongst what was considered the conservative wing of the Roman elite, like your Cato or somebody would be like, "I hate the ISIS worshippers. They're gross. They cut off guys' balls."
So it got to a point where the cult of ISIS was like, basically, if you couldn't get pregnant, you had to join the cult of ISIS to have a baby. Like it worked for one person, and so a lot of the rich women got in. And
Yeah,
one of my favorite things they had was they had these rebirth rituals. Did you
hell
hear
yeah,
about
like that
this at
episode
all?
of Tom Goes to the Mayor.
Kind of. Like kind of actually.
What happened? I didn't hear about this. Tell me
So
about it.
basically, so you had to prepare before undergoing the ritual. You had to purify yourself and prepare
Okay,
spiritually.
I could do
So
racist
you
that.
would
cases.
fast and you'd have to be abstinent.
I
Initiates
can't do
abstain
that.
from certain foods, alcohol, and sexual activities for several weeks in
Be
preparation.
Mormon for 3 weeks.
Then they had to
Hmm.
take a purifying bath through immersion in water,
Be
often
Jewish for
in
one day.
often in a
I know.
sacred river or a temple, which is nuts. Then basically the initiate symbolically died to their old self. They would do a dramatic reenactment where the myth of Isis would come and revive her husband Osiris. So the person would, to initiate like Osiris, they would symbolically enter the underworld, which was like this dark space they had camped out, and they would stay there for a while. Then the climax of the ritual focused on the rebirth, so they would be burst into light. They would be anointed with sacred oils. They would be dressed in a new white garment to symbolize the purity in their rebirth. And then they would recite sacred vows, devoting themselves and confirming all their beliefs into this religion of ISIS. Stop me if you've heard this before, or is that just a fucking Christian baptism?
Yeah, well, yeah, I that's interesting. I do think that I don't know if Gerard was the one who came up with this or somebody else, but I do think like the baptism is like some sort of like archetypical thing where I think the origin of it was like you almost drowned yourself and then you came out of the drown. So it very much was like what you're saying. You have this symbolic death and rebirth where you go right to the cusp of your actual death in a
Mhm.
baptism. And I think this is what the Essenes did. Is this right, Patrick? Am I right to say that the Essenes did
Oh,
something like that?
yeah, baptism used to be a literal, a trial to, bring you to the absolute brink of death. They would essentially drown you and then breathe life back into you. You are essentially are being reborn. Um, there's nothing new under the sun. So,
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's basically what I was just saying. So this is something that's sort of, I think, embedded into the human psyche from a time earlier than both Christian or Jewish or Roman ideation or
Mhm.
Egyptian ideation. It's
Phoenician,
something really
Assyrian.
primeval, this idea of like the ritual rebirth. And it's particularly related to water. Maybe it even has something to do with like when you are born again, it's when you're born, it's wet.
Yeah, that's what
Your
I was
mom's
thinking.
fucking
Yeah.
juices come out with you.
There's
Um,
also, sorry to interrupt you, but
no, I was done. Go
we're
ahead.
in this like era now where people take it as a given that they should be uh taking strong psychedelic drugs to to
Achieve
basically,
gnosis.
yeah, achieve, yeah, go someplace they've never heard of, don't speak the language, and never had an interest in. And they're going in that space being like this liminal 5D fucking plane where there's malevolent, mischievous demons that cackle at you and belittle you. Personally, I think what the drowning and the rebirth rituals, all that stuff of bringing people, all of these all of these rites of passage that bring people to near death. They always say DMT. It's the thing that's released in your brain
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you're
when you sleep
dying,
and when
yeah,
you're dying. It's like, okay, yeah. Who's to say that I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of people's faith in these mystery cults and mystery schools was coming from a genuine place because they were being introduced to things outside of this world, um, through an intermediary that knew something they did not, and so they might as well have been believe that they this is magic, that this is when,
right.
not to get all not to get all chemicals in your brain, man, but people are, we're easily tricked.
Yeah,
And what's the word, not false spiritual experience is uh, uh forgive me, drawing a blank. uh
well, can I make a modern
Please.
day analogy? So Church of Scientology, in Spy magazine, a guy who is friends with Jim Goad, by the way.
Mm.
He went into he went as far as he could into Scientology in his purely investigative capacity.
Mm.
And he wrote this series in which he went through, like, they have a purification ritual much like the ones we're talking about, in which they give you a bunch of they make you go into a sauna. They give you a bunch of like pills and shit, and then make you
Yeah.
go into a sauna, and then they put you in front of a mirror when you come out, and apparently what's in the pills is vitamin A, and when you take vitamin A and you get really warm, it makes you flush like really
Yeah.
crazy red. And so they go, look, because you've done these things inside the Church of Scientology, look, those are the thetans coming out of you. And you look in the mirror and you're like, whoa. And meanwhile, you just got out of a sauna, and that's usually fucks with your head a little bit. And they
Yeah.
also make you not drink water and shit like that. But anyway, so this guy, he did this, and then he went directly to a doctor who was waiting for him. And then they just drug tested him to see what they gave him. And this is how they exposed it, by the way, was that this trick was they were giving him I believe it's vitamin A. It could have been something else.
Mm.
But regardless, they were doing the same shit. They're literally, and to many people who went through that whole process of doing the fucking Scientology thing, they were like, wow, the thetans are coming out of me, man. It's fucking crazy. Then why would they lie? You know, I see a physiological reaction that's happening.
Mhm.
Or, and again, maybe people in ancient Rome were a little more credulous than people in, Western Christian oriented, facts and logic land. But yeah, I imagine going down underground and having them go in your ear or whatever. It
Yeah.
could be sufficiently convincing to go like, yeah, dude, I died and I'm back now.
You don't even have to go that isolated. Take it a step
Yeah.
further. You go into a slightly dark room where somebody goes, "Tell me about your most traumatic experiences." Okay, all the defense mechanisms you built up are bullshit. Breaks you down, you cry, you get that endorphin release, and they go, "We'll see you next week." And you, all right, as
Yeah.
long as I do what they tell me, I'm doing what's right. That feels good. It's literally just therapy
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
on a
well,
on a
again,
on a micro weekly basis.
that's a whole nother fucking conversation we could have about the fact that therapy is just Jewish psychobabble in itself, by the way. Self-critique session, and mommy hatred session.
Scapegoating ritual.
Scapegoating ritual against your parents, yeah.
Post hoc.
Yeah. But what's it called? What I was gonna say is so that's Isis. We what are some of the other ones? Oh, Dionysus is the one that a lot of people draw comparisons between
favorite.
Jesus. Because he's a wine god, his blood is wine, he's a virgin birth, he died and came back to life. A lot of people go, oh, Christ bros, BTFO. No. How about
No,
these are
wrong,
wrong.
wrong.
These are characteristics that you would find in a deity.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a certain limit to what they could do, and it's unlimited, but there's certain ways they show that power. One of them's rising from the dead, having no
Right.
dude.
We're humans. What is the most miraculous thing? Rising from the dead. We're humans. What is the most miraculous thing? Being born of a virgin birth. We're humans. Well, what is, I guess actually, the wine thing is sort of more speaks to the sort of religious connotation of wine, but that goes into every culture, by the way, that wine is like viewed as a sacrament of religion. So miss me with that fucking with that, like they just made Dionysus into Jesus thing. But I will say that, and this is not, I don't think this is a cynical viewpoint at all, but I will say that the fact that the Romans who were introduced to Christianity sort of had a cultural, what's the word, common cultural, what's the word, commonality, a cultural commonality between something that they already understood as part of their living culture, and then they hear about Jesus and they go, oh, so it's sort of like this, but he also says we should be nice to each other.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, it's just, it's with Christianity, it's always a step further than everyone's willing to take. It's, oh, you should be nice
to each other.
Yeah, be nice to each other. Yeah, anyone can tell you to love your brother. Anyone can tell you to love your neighbor. Love your enemy.
It's
do
hard.
not
Yeah.
do not reciprocate violence. Do not return ill will with ill will. And that's which is what's so confounding to the quid pro quo approach to spirituality that
Of the Roman.
yeah, it's in Christianity, you will never pay your debt. You will never
Be done. You'll never be even.
yeah. What you have here and the opportunity you have here is greater than you'll ever be able to pay back. And you don't have to feel bad about that. You just have to feel grateful for it and not waste it. I'm sorry, I'm pontificating. By the way, the term I was looking for was prelest, false spiritual experience, which I'm sure is just, it's what everyone, I mean, talking about, we're going to be speaking about Joan of Arc in some weeks to come.
A couple weeks, yeah.
Sorry, teaser. But
that's a radio tease, folks.
Yeah.
He's learning.
I mean, you want to talk about prelest? You want to talk about, I mean, what very well could
you want to talk about pre-cum? I had a period of my life where I was obsessed with Saint Joan of Arc, dude. We're talking historical fiction, fucking the whole nine. I was like, this chick's the shit.
She was 19 and a virgin, bro.
I was 40 and I was like, yeah, it's an older chick, fresh pussy. Let's
older
go.
babes.
You can talk to God. Who cares? So can the girl down the hall.
Sword.
I bet you Joan of Arc doesn't cut herself while listening to The Cure.
So true, dude.
She doesn't, yeah.
No, she jumps out windows.
But I don't.
God bless her.
I don't really think the cult of Dionysus really existed. This is
interesting take.
This is my hot take. So basically, what was it known for? This is Roman McCarthyism. Like, it was this whole lustiest celebration that's always happening, and they were drinking wine.
Bacchanal.
They were doing mushrooms. They were having orgies at night. And the big thing was that everybody could be a member. So it could be slaves. Noble women, freed women, the whole nine were all doing it together. And it all kind of came to a head. What was the event called? Fuck, I had it written down.
Bacchanal, right? That's their festival. It was called the Bacchanal.
No. They had like a crystal knoll of the cult of Bacchus.
Crystal knocked.
Yeah.
Dionysian crystal knocked?
Let me see. So basically, there was this woman named Hispala Fencia, and she was a freed woman who snitched on the cult because her boyfriend joined, and she was mad. He was getting mad pussy. So she was just like, if you join, I'm telling. And so he joined, she told. A commission was led by the Senate, and they investigated the cult. The Senate issued the Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalibus, an official decree outlawing the cult except under very strict government official sanctions.
Okay.
So here are the allegations that they made against the cult. The cult was accused of promoting moral decay through its nocturnal rites.
Correct.
Which supposedly involved orgies, drunkenness, and psychedelic mushrooms. The Senate claimed the cult encouraged secret plotting and could incite a rebellion against the state. The mixing of social classes and genders in an uncontrolled setting was viewed as a threat to the traditional Roman hierarchies. And they alleged that there were some human sacrifices going on as a way to truly prove you are a member of the cult.
Slave sacrifices, not human sacrifices.
Great points, honestly.
Come on.
Yeah, they were allowed in the cult. Cute. Yeah, I'll bet. They were allowed to be fucking dinner.
So this was the Bacchanalian affair of 186 BC.
Right.
In case anybody was wondering.
It's a little later than I thought.
So here's what this happened, though. The crackdown occurred. Over 7,000 individuals were implicated in being a member of the cult, all of whom were either imprisoned, exiled, or executed. The estimates around 5,000 people were just straight up murdered. Leading figures of the cult, including priests and other organizers, were punished severely without trial. All the rites were banned. Temples and meeting places of these groups were burned to the ground. Let's see.
The dogs were kicked.
Livy was the wife of one of the senators, and she wrote all this information down.
Well, Livy's a fella, I believe.
Fella. Okay, well, Livy was associated with the Senate. Maybe, yeah.
He was a senator, I think. He was a senator.
Maybe he was a senator. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just have the cliff notes.
I know
here,
Livy.
but
I listen. When I heard Livy, I assumed it was a fat woman.
Livy,
Or
Livy,
Pompey.
Livy on the label. No, but so basically he wrote it all down, and it was him justifying the Senate killing all their political rivals.
Oh,
So
I
they would
don't
just
doubt
go
it.
around and being like, "Oh, you're in this cult that this woman they convinced." Like one
Oh
woman
no
was,
shit,
yeah, it was just their way of getting anybody that they didn't like involved by being like, "Nope, he's a
man.
Bacchanalian cult," and then murdering them.
No shit. I wouldn't be
Especially,
surprised in the least if that was
yeah,
the case. Yeah.
especially when so much of that comes down to staying hush hush. You
Yeah.
know,
What
what
did they
happens at the
do?
Bacchanal stays at the Bacchanal.
Exactly. And what did they do? They found a lippy white woman to be the face of their cause,
Mm.
and then they
Well,
had
she was
one.
Italian, Bobby. Chill.
They had one guy blow up
L'Amours.
something in New Orleans with a one flag, and it justifies a whole military action against all your political rivals.
Oh, so true. So true.
But yeah, I really
Now I
like the
can't-
cult.
Now I can't start my car without calling calling the DMV for permission.
Right. Yeah. You got to use your thumbprint in order to start the car. Yeah.
Dick print.
The best part is, though, this might be where Vivek pays off, because if we outsource the DMV call center every time, they
Oh
really
my God,
hate-
we'll be
they
golden.
really
Yeah,
hate
we'll
the
never have to.
terrorists.
It'll never be addressed. Yeah, no. It's funny. Yeah, you're gonna have to use thumb coin. Use one thumb coin every time you start your car, so there'll be a blockchain. There'll be a blockchain transaction of every time you start your car, so they can go back and review it to make sure that you gave an authentic, your minted thumb coin in order to start your car. And this
Just
is
trying
the
to
beginning
drink
of
and
everything
drive.
sucking. Yeah.
Okay,
Man,
first
I'm
thing I
trying to-
need you to do, get me a Google Play card.
Yeah. Why, son? Why are you redeeming your car?
No, you did not have
Fucking
to
bloody
fucking do this.
So
Son.
Like you said, everybody needs one group we can all hate. I think we found that.
Yeah, well, listen, it's pretty easy. What's it called? Okay, so let's talk about the last one I want to talk about is Mithras, of course. Mithras is another one of these ones where it's all enshrouded in mystery. There's a reason for that. Is it was like kind of like the first to third century Roman version of the Masons, essentially. Whereas it was men's only, first of all, and second of all, they did not write a single thing down about it ever in history. The only reason we know they even existed, perhaps they're a hoax, by the way, but we found their meeting halls essentially, and they were a cult. Yeah, the Mithraeums, they're called. Yes. And they basically, it was similar to a Masonic hall in the sense that it was like a function hall in which they all sat around and ate dinner. And they all had a bunch of, they all sat at different seats, which denoted different positions within the like the group or whatever. And it did not get destroyed in the way that the Bacchus cult was, or the Dionysian cult was. It just simply disappeared one day, and much of it is enshrouded in mystery because, again, they didn't write any of this stuff down. All we have is very few pieces of evidence as to what the deal is with them. But basically, there's this guy named David Ulansey, and I believe his take is probably the most correct, which is based on the fact that all of the seats there's like 12 seats at the table at the meeting halls, and each one has what do you call it, an animal that's associated with the zodiac.
Okay.
And it's like, so Mithras was like an ancient Persian deity essentially. But there's seemingly no like theological connection between the Persian Mithras and the Mithras that we see in the Roman AD era. So what David Ulansey probably he surmises is that it's actually a Perseus cult, like Perseus, the character from Greek mythology. Because if you recall, I think he does strangle an ox, or
He
strangles
kills the
bull.
Minotaur in the labyrinth.
Kills the Minotaur
Yes.
in the labyrinth, and best of all, what's it called? The way that it's the chairs are set up in the Mithraeum is it would speak. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention at the Mithraeums, the big centerpiece of the entire thing is a guy killing a bull from above.
Mhm.
And that's Mithras supposedly. And the funny thing is, so the way that the seats are set up is that the head of the seat, that the place that would be there at the head of the table is where Taurus should be in relation to all the other zodiac symbols. And anyone who knows anything about astronomy is Taurus, above Taurus is Perseus
Mhm.
on the in the sky, in the night sky,
Mhm.
essentially. So very likely the Mithras cult was likely just like a astrological like horoscope cult, not
Mm.
bullshitting.
I've got a counter hot take.
Okay.
I think like if you look at these big football schools, they have a locker room, right, where they've got
Sure.
lots of equipment and like this was a time when legions were big. If
Sure.
you look at the ranking system they found, the Mithric rank really mimics the army and the military
It
almost to a
does. It was
T.
very popular in the army too, by the way.
Mhm.
And it was
All
mainly
these
full of
mystery
soldiers.
cults.
So some of the people I found speculate it was just like a dude who loved his legion and was like, if I give them fine conditions and take them here to train, we'll bond as a team. He was like the original Phil Jackson, where it was like we need to put on fish and read Aristotle, and it was like a training ground and a celebration hall. They would come back and celebrate their victories there. And the reason why it kind of fell out of passing was the guy died in war and there was nobody
Mm.
to like take it back and be like, all right, this is how we passed it along. That was I forget what author it was, but that was just a speculation they
That's
had.
interesting. So that's a good take, actually. And also, it would stand to reason is that like really the Mithraic cult sort of fell to the sidelines, pun intended, um, when Christianity took hold. Was basically
Or the
the real
Julian
death knell
cult.
to it. The
They called
Julian
it the
cult too. Yeah.
Imperialists. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
No, it's interesting. I never thought of it that way. But yeah. So all these, but
Do-
the fact of the matter is, we'll never know.
No, we will not.
Speaking of things we will never know, I mean, you have symbolism of the Mithras cult being Perseus killing a bull. We have, you know, Baal worship. Few, however, what, couple thousand, not even years before this.
1,000 years before this, I
Yeah,
think.
so does that is to people in that time, does seeing Perseus killing the bull, do they do they read something from that? Is there a language in that?
Possible.
Is there something about this, because first of all, the cult of Mithras is just a Latinization of Mitra, I think it was in Persia.
Mitra, yeah, which is a
Yeah,
sun god.
yeah, and Mitra is like the sun
Who
god
also
and
slaughtered
a
a bull.
yeah, and so there's no more obvious way for these old, bygone, or far out religions to get brought back other than through war. I mean, that makes the most sense.
Right.
But let's jump ahead 2,000 years. We'll put on our schizo hats. Do people still worship Mithras? Do people still worship Baal? Are those who worship these nonsense entities, are they at odds with one another? And have they always been?
So
It's kind
I
of dumb.
I take it a step further. If you go back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of Gilgamesh's big feats, where they're like, we have to get somebody to match Gilgamesh, is he slaughters the bull. He wrestles the god bull and kills it, and then they bring Enkidu, and who's like represents this wild nature and the element of like pure carnal. And I think if you think about it, we do to some effect still worship that in the society. Andrew Tate would be my best example. Like,
Oh wow.
just I do what I want. Like I am an animal. It doesn't matter as long as I'm the best. And so
Yeah.
like there is
Very
that,
Nietzschean.
and we all kind of want a piece of that. But we also realize like the societal side, which is what Gilgamesh and all these other things represent of like the human good, the human collective. There's an importance to that too.
Right.
And I think so. Yeah, I do think there are people who worship the bull, and they are at odds. Like if you
Mm.
think about it, there's so much we could do as a society that 90% of people agree on. but like we're so stuck bickering with each other because half the people are like this, half the people are, you know what I mean? Like, and if we weren't doing
well, that's
that,
a societal
we could
construction in order to prevent us from coming to those things that we already agree that the majority of people agree on.
It's time to kill your senators. Pay the tax revolution in their blood. You heard it here first.
Hi, FBI. Hi, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm already on the list.
Satire.
Yep. I couldn't have put it better myself, Bobby, honestly. But I will say this. I think we've done a fairly good overview of what the ancient Romans believed, and sort of how it contextualizes with our modern view on religion, and also I don't know, I just think it's a really interesting thing because it's just so alien to us because of the fact that we are products of the Christian dominated Western tradition, essentially. And even though, like, again, you'll even find LARPers online who like go like, yeah, dude, I'm fucking Roman pagan, bro. And like, and
be a real pagan.
But again, I think it is a reactionary thing because it ultimately it's as I was saying to you earlier, Bobby, but it's like a reactionary thing where you haven't, like, the society we inhabit, it on paper is like this, the Christian morality or whatever, but like clearly, like, again, it's a world of barbarity.
Why do we think it's a world of barbarity? What's changed? It used to be the exact same
Christian
world.
Conception, yeah.
It used to be the exact same world, and people just used to look out the window and go, everything's as it should be.
It's a great point, actually, to summate this, yeah.
And now we look out and we go,
we live in, great point. Let me put the fine point on what you're saying. We live in the same moral times as the ancient Romans, but the fundamental difference is that we now view it for the evil that it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will say one fun point was when philosophy became a part of the elites. Like, the idea of Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius became like a practical thing. And here's what people don't tell you about him. He drank morphine-laced wine every night. You know how easy it is to be a chill guy and not let anything bother you every night when you're drinking morphine-laced wine?
Oh, shit.
Marcus Aurelius was a bitch. Give me that and I'll write a better fucking book.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah.
Bobby Tamburro's Marcus Aurelius is a bitch, and so are you. How to get your life on track. Be angry, be pagan, let's be the bull. Here we go.
Woo!
Hell
Bobby,
yeah,
what do you want to promote?
You know what, guys? Check out this. Check out Midnights with Mike. We're coming back on strong, and make sure you check out everything in the Davey Mack universe. This weekend, I don't know when it comes out, but I'll be at the Comedy Zone with Jameson, so I will have been at the Comedy Zone with Jameson. It'll be a fun time.
Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. As always, www.historyhomos.com for the RSS feed. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, Odyssey, Rumble, BitChute, Rockfin, and most importantly, you can check out the video episodes, as well as bonus content every single week at historyhomospod.substack.com. Subscribe there. You get weekly bonus content. It is just more of the same show. So if you thought the show was interesting, you want to hear more of it, go to historyhomospod.substack.com and subscribe there. Excellent community there. And check out Patrick's video audio reinterpretations at can'tgetfooledagain.com. You can join us at our Telegram group at time of recording, still the friendliest place on the internet. t.me/historyhomos is the channel. t.me/historyhomos chat is the chat. Telegram, I should have mentioned that it was Telegram. But also, if you want to have any questions, comments, or concerns, email me at historyhomospod@gmail.com. And if you want a t-shirt, you can email me your size and address at that same email. Follow us across social media at historyhomospod. Also, follow Bobby at Bobby Tamburro across social media. He did not plug that. Die with dignity. Anything you want to say before we get out of here, Patrick?
I'd like to pose a rhetorical question. The first line.
I'll answer it.
The first line from Psalms 2. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain?
later homos.
Whispers of the gods.
Remember nights under Jupiter's glow. Lightning strikes, the thunder rolls. He whispered dreams with power untold. In the shadows where my hopes unfold. Oh, the gods, they dance in my mind with stories of love and battles entwined. From the city of Rome to the stars above, I'm chasing my fate with a heart full of love. Juno's eyes, fierce as fire, a protector's gaze, my heart's desire. She fought for women, for love, for peace. In her embrace, my worries cease. Oh, the gods, they dance in my mind with stories of love and battles entwined. From the city of Rome to the stars above, I'm chasing my fate with a heart full of love. Mars taught me to fight for my dreams. In the arena where nothing's as it seems. With every scar I forge my way. In the heat of battle I learned to sway. Apollo sang of the sun's warm light. In his golden rays I found my might. With lyres strumming soft melodies, he guided my heart, put my soul at ease. Oh, the gods, they dance in my mind with stories of love and battles entwined. From the city of Rome to the stars above, I'm chasing my fate with a heart full of love. Mythos and shadows, a secret guide. In the depths of night, he walks by my side. With the gods as my friends, I'll make my stand. In the tapestry of life, I'll weave my own brand. Oh, the gods, they whisper and sing. In the halls of my heart, they'll forever cling. I'm just a dreamer with stars in my eyes. In the dance of the gods, I'll rise where I fly.